according to your perspective, what are the main causes of food price volatility?
Well, it depends which country you are referring to. One, there is localized, and two, there are this internationally transmitted level of price. At the international level, we can categorize into three. There are developing countries, and there are this energy producing, oil producing countries, and then you have got, of course, the more developed countries like the US and the big economies and the Europe and the US. So in that sense, and most often from the developed countries' perspective, you can say the ultimate source of this instability, this price volatility, could be traced to their huge demand for energy, and then corn, for example, is diverted to the production of ethanol and the like. At the same time, there is again from the Middle East, and there is this export of oil, and of course it has got demand from the rest of the world, most importantly from in terms of energy, the addicted countries, so to speak. I'm sorry to say that, and at the same time that's associated with kind of instability, and the source of energy is the Middle East, and the Middle East is associated with again recurring volatility, recurring uncertainty. Then of course every time there is uncertainty around that, security problems, and definitely that would be transmitted into both developing countries and developed countries. Financial regulations and like that we had 2008 and 2009 in the US, this financial crisis, and yes, it's a one-time shock, but it continues for a while, and prices, once they start, and there is this inertia, and they continue. So in that sense, at least at international level, the source, I would say, is from this two sources, like the cartels, the energy producing Middle East, and then of course the developed countries associated with this high energy. There are localized type of price that is in particular associated with developing countries, and that has something to do with one, this climate change and recurring drought, and those drought creates uncertainty, and once price increases, and of course that is coupled with this aspiration to to break out of poverty, to emerge, at least to break the low-level economic trap, and to do that they go for demand management. That is expansionary monetary and fiscal policies, and they need to really to foster investment, and then high demands, low supply in the face of recurring drought, and that I think would say is are the cause.
And what do you think are the main consequences for poor consumers and producers?
Yes, and more. I think we have to distinguish between two. There are price rises, maybe sustainable and predictable price rises, and there are volatilities. What is important is, sometimes predictable prices, if they are not that too high, then they may be beneficiary, in particular for rural poor, for the producer, so to speak. Otherwise, there are instances where there are bumper harvest, and then it's, low prices normally shocks in general, it's price decline, so to speak, would be disincentive for the rural poor peasants. But if they are predictable and a little bit increase in prices, it may serve as an incentive for them. What is problematic is the volatility of prices. That is, if they are volatile, then on two grounds. One, the producers themselves may not be sure. Actually, they have to decide between producing staple crops and high-valued cash crops. If there is volatility, they cannot be sure about the price, and therefore they would rather focus on staple crops. And then the staple crops yes, it may be enough for at least for themselves, and it would be subsistent, and it's hard to get surplus and somehow get out of poverty. So the volatility has got that impact on consumers. That's straightforward, meaning because they have to somehow, let's say, the consumers, quite difficult to define. There are two. One category is that purely consumers, wage earners, in particular in urban areas. Their wage may not increase. In developing countries in particular, this is frozen, because in times of price rise, normally it's not advisable to increase salary anyway, salaries and wage. And as a result, that would have a negative consequence, and meaning their real income will be eroded, and therefore the welfare impact is quite diverse and negative impact. But there are some producers as well, but at the same time they do have this they're net buyers, in the sense that what they produce is not enough to cover their whole consumption. And in that case, then it depends on the source of their financial mechanism. So at least for the poor, the net buyers, and purely on urban wage earners, and which is really frozen, then definitely the impact is quite negative, I would say.
And what steps and measures should be taken to improve this situation?
Steps is on two grounds. The first, I think the major one is so international, and developing countries in particular, and it's not expected more often from them. The volatilities in particular, whether they're transmitted heavily to the straight to the developing countries or not, is one issue. But at least globally, the main players are developed countries, and then just the source of energy, like the Middle East and energy producing countries, that's oil producing countries, and it has to come from that. So one thing is, maybe from the energy point of view, and reduce this dependence on biofuels, like in particular on the corn is used for ethanol, and that has to be really reduced. Meaning, the technology is there, and there is no hope that at least developing countries would invent that, and so all of a sudden, and then the potential for inventing new techniques and for innovation to use some more renewable energy, in that sense, is from developed countries. At least it's in the longer and medium run, then it should come from that. And the second is the regulation, it's financial regulations that should not be wild. There must be some level, to some extent. Otherwise, every time there is a shock in the financial market, and then it's quite a problem. And the last, of course, from developing countries is that maybe yes, they need to break the low-level equilibrium trap from demand management stuff, but at least there must be a limit for that.
Thank you.